In my first 2 lucid dreams, I had complete control. I could become a goddess at will, craft a mechanical body for myself, or even wake up if I felt it was necessary. But recently, things have changed. I've had 2 more lucid dreams. Well, one was more semi-lucid, and in both, I struggled to maintain that same sense of power. In one of them, my ability to create was strangely restricted by the laws of physics. I tried to summon floating ice platforms to battle on, but I couldn't. I couldn't even change the color of the leaves on the trees. When I attempted to turn them red or gold, they simply snapped back to green, as if resisting me. In the other dream, I believed I was inside a story, one I could alter at will, much like a lucid dream. I was in a room with a teammate when a monster appeared and killed her, taking over her body. She became a shadowy silhouette with glowing purple eyes. The monster itself, before the possession, was a shadowy humanoid blob with glowing white eyes. Was that a shadow person? I tried to rewind time, to change the plot and save her. But all I managed to do was rewind the scene by a few seconds, just enough to watch her die all over again. As it happened, an invisible narrator spoke to some imagined audience, explaining, "You could be consumed by a monster, never to be seen again." I made one more attempt to stop it, but instead of changing the outcome, I simply woke up. Why am I losing control of my lucid dreams when I once held complete command over them? And what exactly was that thing I encountered? I was still living in my previous house when I discovered that I could cause unusual effects merely by using my hands. Curious and excited, I began to experiment. To help channel this newfound power as a beginner, I grabbed a black pencil to use as a wand. I chose the open area at the back of the house for these experiments, a medium-large space that included a mini cemetery, where I had buried over 30 or 40 snakes my cats had hunted, and a smaller covered space for the laundry. I preferred to stand in the uncovered space at night, concentrating deeply on what I wanted to happen and casting around. I vividly recall thinking of an owl, and, to my astonishment, making one appear. Then, I decided to make it vanish, and it did. I also remember either finding or being given a small letter by the mother of an ex-classmate. The note informed me that I was allowed to explore my own magic, because there was a magical war looming, and that I must begin my training in both offensive and defensive spells immediately. Inspired, I conjured up a life-sized enchanted boar made entirely of paper to use as a practice dummy. Remarkably, it acted much like a living boar. I began casting offensive spells at it, some even reminiscent of those in Harry Potter, such as the Cruciator's Curse, if you can believe it. As I cast spells on the paper boar, I sometimes saw glows and brightness around it, or a fine, smoky dust-like sparkle. Though nothing so intense as to attract undue attention, each effect deepened my fascination. I could truly feel my thoughts and concentration manifest in this dream, making it incredibly captivating. I continued training on the boar until I eventually woke up. I often wish I had experienced more of that story. Last night, I had an utterly bizarre dream. I was playing tag with my siblings when, quite suddenly, the sky cracked open above us. I looked up, beginning to realize, this is a dream. Then, out of nowhere, a girl appeared beside me. She tapped me on the shoulder and said, quite casually, "Hey." I stared at her, baffled. "What are you doing in my dream?" I asked. She smiled and replied, "I got bored of my own dreams. Thought I'd try someone else's for a change." Before I could say anything else, she began taking control of the world around us. With a single punch, she launched herself into the air, exactly the way I do when I fly in lucid dreams. I watched her disappear into the distance, just a tiny speck against the now healed blue sky. Naturally, I tried to follow her. I leapt into the air, but all I managed was a pitiful 5-foot hop before falling straight back down. She came crashing back to earth, landing with such force that she obliterated my entire back garden. She looked pleased with herself, smiling brightly. "Your dream's a lot of fun," she said. I was furious. "Get out," I snapped. I tried to will her out of existence, but then I got distracted, the gravity flipped, and the world warped into a giant ring, like the inside of some rotating space habitat. Everything was spinning. I steadied myself and launched a punch to fly towards her, determined to fight back. But just as I neared, she teleported behind me. Suddenly, everything returned to normal gravity, the world, all of it. I decided to stop messing about. I snapped my fingers and froze time. That's my ultimate move when I'm lucid dreaming. I felt a surge of pride, it always works. She was completely frozen. I walked towards her slowly, ready to end it. And then, she blinked. She broke free. Before I could react, she turned the tables and froze time on me. It was horrible, like being trapped underwater, a crushing pressure pinning me in place. I couldn't move at all. She walked leisurely around me, studying me like I was some curiosity. Eventually, I broke free. I punched at her, but the attack was feeble. She laughed. Genuinely laughed, as if I'd tickled her. Finally, she let out a sigh. "That was fun," she said. "Messing around in your dream." Then she looked at me, more serious this time. "I don't even know your name." "My name's Lily. In real life, I'm from New York. I'd like to meet you sometime." Now, usually I'd just brush off a dream character. They're just projections, after all. But this felt different. I've never had a dream where another person seemed lucid too. And that final part, it was so clear. Her name. Where she's from. Like it wasn't just the dream talking. Whatever it was, it left me feeling unsettled. Curious. And maybe a bit haunted. So, if you know any lucid dreamers named Lily who have brown hair and live in New York, well, let me know. In a dream, the exact details of which now elude me, I gradually began to realize that I was dreaming. In the past, I might have responded to such awareness by doing something dramatic, leaping out of a window, for instance, but this time, I chose simply to dissolve the dream with my mind. Yet, rather than fading into nothingness, the dream merely gave way to another. A new world emerged in its place. Strangely, my lucidity held steady throughout. I moved seamlessly from one dreamscape to the next, dissolving each without being consumed by it. There was no fear, no struggle, just a curious sense of control and clarity. It was during this experience that I began to perceive something more profound, an intermediate state, a sort of foundation underlying every dream. The best way I can describe it is as a fractal world. It was breathtaking. Consciousness itself seemed to shine through it like soft, radiant light, refracting into intricate, shifting patterns of color and motion. Though I felt lucid for what seemed like hours, and so much occurred, I find myself reaching the limits of my memory here. After all, I had slept for over 9 hours, and dreams are delicate things, so vivid in the moment, yet so easily lost upon waking. I've had my fair share of sleep paralysis, nothing particularly out of the ordinary. The usual, I can't move, and some grotesque figure stands at the edge of the bed, watching. But this was something else entirely. It was far worse. It began innocently enough. I was dreaming, walking through a rather upscale clothing shop, browsing for new clothes. Everything felt polished and pristine. But then I reached the stairs, and with each step I took, my legs grew heavier, as though gravity itself was turning against me. Suddenly, the world vanished. Everything disappeared except the staircase. It was just me and my dog on the steps. That was the moment I realized I was dreaming. My dog had died just days earlier. Our father found him at the hospital, having consumed poison. It was a painful, raw memory, and I knew instantly that what I was seeing wasn't real. I shouted, "This can't be true. My dog is dead. You're not my dog." And then, bang, a figure. Tall, slender, almost faceless. The kind of presence that hits you like a camera flash, and leaves your vision blurred. I couldn't see clearly anymore. I woke up in bed. Thought the nightmare was over. Groggily, I made my way to the kitchen to fetch some water, only to see my dog, lying on his old bed as though he'd never died. He didn't move. Just stared. Lifeless, but aware. This can't be true. I woke up. "Just leave me alone," I shouted. Panicked. I began striking myself, desperate to awaken fully. But that same flicker, like a VHS glitch, crossed my eyes again, and I was pulled under once more. I woke up again, but I couldn't move. My PC screen was glitching violently, and then, amidst the digital static, a horrific face appeared. Monstrous, impossible, speaking in a language I couldn't begin to understand. Then came another false awakening. I walked out of my room into the darkness of our flat. The living room was pitch black, and something was standing there. A towering silhouette, unmoving, watching. Again I woke, this time roaming the dark house, the air thick with tension and dread. I decided to flee, to run downstairs to my grandmother's flat. But when I arrived, I realized I had dreamt this exact moment before, years ago. I dashed beneath her bed, just as I had in that previous dream, only to feel that dreadful presence behind me again. I could see its feet through the gap between the floor and the bed's edge. And then, finally, I was awake. For real this time. It was 6 a.m. I stepped into the hallway. The dog bed was empty. Everything was still. But for hours, I couldn't be sure. I kept waiting for the loop to start again. That dream truly shook me. There's something uniquely terrifying about being trapped in a loop, knowing you're dreaming, screaming to wake up, yet falling deeper every time. And what hurt most was the repeated encounter with my beloved dog. That familiar, silly look he used to give me, now twisted into something haunting, weaponized by my subconscious. I haven't had a loop like that since. And every time I'm caught in sleep paralysis, I silently pray, please let me just wake up like normal tomorrow. It began, as dreams often do, with something utterly mundane. I found myself standing before a rundown little shop, the kind you might avoid on instinct. I was holding a crumpled pamphlet I'd picked up off the ground earlier. Apparently, it was for a travel agency, which made sense considering I'd spent the evening scouring the internet for holiday destinations. Despite its sketchy appearance, I stepped inside. The shop was dim, oddly quiet, but there was a young person behind the counter. Early to mid-20s, I'd guess. They looked androgynous, soft-featured and hard to pin down. I remember blurting, "You're much younger than I thought you'd be." They laughed. "If you want me to be older, I recommend a New Zealand farm stay." The comment threw me. What did New Zealand have to do with age? But before I could ask, they were already leading me up a narrow staircase, rambling about package deals and destinations. We climbed until we reached a door marked NZ. It was nothing like the grimy store below, carved wood, detailed and regal. They opened it, and I stepped into a wide open farm beneath a bright sky. I turned back, confused, and instead of the young person, there stood an elderly figure, grinning. There, I'm older, as you wished. Still puzzled, I said, all right then, take me to the Victorian era. If they could shift appearances, why not get some old-timey aesthetic out of this? Eye candy and all. They agreed, but warned me, going back in time might cost you. Or some poor souls. How much do souls cost? I joked. A lot, they replied. I brushed it off. It's just a dream anyway. We visited more doors, eras, places, moments, but none felt quite right. Eventually, I gave up and asked for their recommendation. That's when the real climb began. Up and up we went, countless stairs, at least 50 flights. I spotted a lift somewhere past the 30th, but they wouldn't let me use it. You don't seem like the kind to tip well. At last, we reached a modest, unlabeled door. Shabby, like the shop itself. It opened onto a small balcony, the view serene, a quiet street, bright sky, gentle breeze. To the left and right were other doors marked staff. I like this one, I said. They turned serious. This trip's going to cost you. How much? I asked. A lot. Still thinking they meant money, I shrugged. But then I looked down from the balcony and saw myself, just outside the shop's front door, hand reaching for the handle. My heart stuttered. I was here. But also there. As soon as I touched the handle, everything blinked to black. When I came to, I was back at the counter. The young person, Vale, I now knew, stood where I had found them before. I looked at myself, but it wasn't quite me anymore. My body, yes. But my sense of self, not so much. They smiled, took my hand and said warmly, welcome. My name is Vale. Where would you like to visit? And just like that, I forgot who I'd been. And then I woke up.